Okay, let's start this deep dive somewhere quiet. If you can, maybe just close your eyes for a second and really try to imagine that feeling, absolute safety, like a warm blanket on a really cold morning, or maybe the soft light from a lamp when everything outside feels chaotic. That feeling that you're exactly where you should be, tucked away, safe, sound. That feeling, that state of just ease. That's what we call comfort. And it feels good, right? I mean, it feels completely harmless. Like maybe it's the reward you get after a long day or a tough journey. But what if staying under that blanket too long? What if mistaking that ease for the destination actually stops you moving? And the really critical part is the world outside your goals, your potential, everything you haven't tapped into yet, it keeps going, keeps running, potentially leaving you behind. So, our mission today in this deep dive is to explore what we're calling the dark side of comfort. How this really cozy, familiar feeling can quietly, almost sneakily, kill your potential. And all the while, it's convincing you that staying still, this stagnation, is actually the safest place to be.
Yeah, and that's such an essential distinction we need to make right from the get-go. Because the research, the sources we looked at, they show we often mix up comfort with, say, genuine rest
Yeah.
or even deep inner peace. But the psychological truth here is, well, it's pretty sharp. Comfort is not peace. Fundamentally, it's the calculated absence, the systematic avoidance, really, of effort or challenge.
That distinction right there, comfort versus peace, that feels like the key, the crack in the wall we need to look through. Let's actually unpack the word itself, comfort, because the linguistic journey, the irony in the English word, it tells a really fascinating story, almost like misdirection. Historically, comfort comes from Latin, comfortere, and it meant to strengthen greatly, like to fortify someone, to bring courage.
Which is a beautiful irony, isn't it? Because our modern use has basically flipped that meaning completely on its head. If you look up comfort now, the definition is mostly about a state of physical or emotional ease. And that word, ease. That's the quiet betrayer, you could say. That's the bit that flips the script from making you stronger to, well, potentially making you weaker. Ease means no difficulty, no stress, no effort. And the problem really kicks in the moment your brain learns that avoiding effort is like a primary goal and a highly rewarding one.
But it sounds so harmless, doesn't it? Almost good, even. Seeking ease. Isn't efficiency about getting the most results with the least effort?
Ah, but that's where the nuance is absolutely critical. And that's a great question a listener should be asking. Efficiency is about cutting out unnecessary friction, things that genuinely slow you down without adding value. But the comfort trap, that's about minimizing necessary friction, the kind of friction you actually need to develop, to grow.
Yeah.
So when we start avoiding effort across the board, we engage in this powerful cognitive distortion. We start telling ourselves stories like, oh, I'm not lazy, I'm just being efficient. Or I'm not avoiding growth, I just need to rest.
But the sources really stress this point. If that rest or that avoidance of effort becomes the routine, then that routine becomes your reality. It solidifies. And that's exactly how comfort, which started as maybe a soft reward, morphs into a cage. And it's quiet, isn't it? Invisible. And it's padded with every excuse, every rationalization you could possibly think of.
Exactly. And to really grasp why this cage is so hard to see, let alone escape, we have to dig into the psychological foundations. We need to explore how the brain is actually wired, how that reward system, particularly dopamine, processes ease versus effort.
Okay, let's dive into that dopamine trap. Because we hear dopamine thrown around a lot, often quite simply. But here, the difference between the types of dopamine release seems crucial. It's not just about feeling good, is it? It's about the strategy the brain adopts.
Precisely. The human reward system is fundamentally built to seek out, broadly speaking, two kinds of dopamine hits. First, there's what we call consummatory pleasure. That's the immediate satisfaction. You eat chocolate, you get a like on social media, you finish a relaxing movie episode. It's the quick, simple reward, designed historically to make you repeat essential survival stuff. But second, and this is much more important for growth, is anticipatory dopamine, sometimes called seeking dopamine. This is the neurochemical driver that actually motivates us to pursue a long-term goal. It's that feeling of hope, of drive, during the effort itself, even before you get the final reward.
Right. So if real progress, like learning a language over months or years, needs that sustained anticipatory effort for a reward that's way down the line, then the comfort trap basically short circuits that whole system.
That's exactly it. Because every time you choose a comforting behavior, scrolling endlessly, procrastinating on that difficult task, choosing the easy mental path, you get a quick, potent hit of that consummatory dopamine, the immediate reward. And the brain registers this pattern. Hey, this works. Low cost, immediate feel good. It learns this is a successful strategy for, well, feeling okay right now. The brain's core job is survival. And survival often means saving energy. Why spend a lot of uncertain energy chasing progress way off in the future when you can get guaranteed relief right now through comfort? So the brain learns quite effectively to chase the immediate low-effort comfort. And that long-term, harder path of actual growth gets overridden by that powerful desire for the quick win. This is the neurological basis, the really insidious core of why we procrastinate.
And this is where the idea of the comfort zone starts to feel genuinely toxic. We should probably acknowledge, though, that comfort zones themselves aren't inherently bad. They start healthily, right? Like you need rest after hard work. You need to feel safe after something traumatic. You relax after earning your keep. That's balance. It's necessary recovery. But the subtle, dangerous shift happens when that protection turns into chronic avoidance. When rest stops being a tool you use to refuel and instead becomes like a permanent lifestyle, a default setting. That's when growth just slams to a halt.
And what's really fascinating psychologically is how we justify this paralysis to ourselves.
Yeah.
You don't see it as stagnation. You mistake the stillness for safety. You think, oh, I'm stable. You build this whole narrative around why now isn't the right time, or I've earned this break, but the break never ends. Psychologists actually have a name for this pattern, the comfort trap. And understanding its core driver is really key. It's often misunderstood. People think it's this deep fear of failure holding us back. But the sources suggest it's often something simpler, more pervasive, and maybe even lower stakes feeling. It's a deep-seated fear of discomfort.
Wait, hold on. Can we really separate fear of failure from fear of discomfort that easily? For a lot of people, they probably sound like the same thing.
They definitely feel related, absolutely. But they're fundamentally different in scope, and I think in the kind of energy they demand from us. Fear of failure usually involves high stakes, right? Losing your job, major public embarrassment, maybe financial ruin. It feels like a crisis. Fear of discomfort, though, that's often a lower stakes, more chronic kind of avoidance. It's the fear of the feeling itself. That slight knot of anxiety when you start a hard task, the mild mental fatigue when you're learning something complex, the physical strain of pushing yourself, or, crucially for many, the awkwardness of speaking a new language imperfectly. Comfort is just so seductive because it offers immediate total control over how you feel right now. If you stay inside those familiar boundaries, you guarantee you won't feel that little twinge of anxiety or that frustrating confusion or that momentary sting of embarrassment.
So, by prioritizing avoiding those mild negative feelings, you basically control your emotional inputs. You make sure the short-term result is always neutral or maybe even pleasant.
Exactly. And the brain sees this as a win, a perfect energy conservation strategy. Look, I kept us safe from feeling bad. Wait, but the dark twist, the really high cost, is that by avoiding the necessary friction, the friction that comes with risk and challenge, you fundamentally end up avoiding living fully. You're essentially trading vitality, real growth, long-term fulfillment for immediate temporary psychological safety. And the brain, which is now kind of hooked on that immediate ease, rationalizes this disastrous trade-off as the smart, sensible move.
Okay, right. Let's make this really concrete. Let's connect this deep psychological stuff directly to your daily routine. Because this cage, it isn't built out of, heavy philosophical chains. It's made of tiny, relatable habits that just pile up over time. Let's focus specifically on the English learning angle for a moment, because this is where that fear of discomfort becomes incredibly visible. It can be paralyzing for so many learners. Think about when you first commit to speaking a new language. You enter this phase of, well, wonderful friction, actually. You're challenging everything, your pronunciation, your sentence structure, your vocabulary, all at once. You try out new words, you attempt sentences, and yeah, inevitably, you sound awkward. You make mistakes constantly. And that stage, crucially, is the stage of maximum growth.
But then reality hits, doesn't it? The sources describe this really common pattern of retreat. Maybe someone in a group corrects you a bit too sharply. Or maybe you just forget a key word right in the middle of the sentence, and there's that awkward silence. Intense embarrassment or frustration follows. The brain, always looking to save energy and avoid pain, registers that specific moment as negative reinforcement. Speaking. Bad feeling.
And what happens next? The response is almost universal, isn't it? You pull back, you retreat, you tell yourself, okay, I'll try again when I feel more prepared. Or maybe I'll just focus on reading and writing for now where there's no immediate pressure.
Yeah.
And then days become weeks, weeks become months. You might still be engaging, watching endless YouTube videos, saving grammar notes, bookmarking articles. But the key thing is you stop speaking.
Yes. The comfort of silence wins out. Because silence takes no effort and carries zero risk of immediate judgment. And you've convinced yourself, perhaps unconsciously, that consuming information, saving notes, watching videos is the same as producing language. speaking, writing, actually using it. This is a perfect example of the comfort trap disguising itself as diligent study or productivity.
That's the really deceptive part, isn't it? We think we're making progress because we're, like, around the material, we're engaging with it, but we're actively resisting the necessary friction that using the material actually demands. And this goes way beyond just language learning, of course. Let's list some other really common comfort behaviors that are actually masking resistance, things we all do. Scrolling endlessly on our phones, sometimes called doom scrolling. Eating when you're bored or anxious, not actually hungry. Binge watching one more episode of that show instead of starting the difficult project you know you need to tackle.
Yeah, we can really categorize these as substituting active creation with passive consumption. The brain gets that immediate dopamine hit from consuming something easy, while the actual effortful work of creating something or doing something hard is successfully avoided. You're essentially teaching your brain, hey, I found a way to feel satisfied without having to grow or exert real effort.
So let's paint that picture really vividly for you, the listener. You scroll one more reel, you skip one more attempt to actually say that complex thought out loud in English. You tell yourself, well, I saved a note, so I've basically done the work. The intention counts.
Hmm.
But the physical act, the verbal act, the challenging act of friction, the real effort is avoided again and again.
And this leads directly to the quiet deterioration, which is, I think, the most insidious and frightening part of comfort. Because the dark side of comfort doesn't usually show up as some sudden huge failure that snaps you awake. It's not a crisis. Instead, it shows up as nothing happening.
Right. No movement, no change, no excitement,
Yeah.
no real goals being hit, just days that look exactly the same, repeating that predictable low-friction pattern over and over.
Comfort systematically dulls your ambition. It lowers your standards for yourself, often without you noticing. It teaches you just to survive, just to maintain the status quo, instead of pushing you to expand and grow. The human spirit, our potential, it seems to require tension, a stretch, a struggle, a little bit of that productive friction, maybe even the momentary pain of falling short, That's what strengthens us.
Let's go back to that muscle analogy, but maybe flesh it out a bit more. When you lift weights, you're creating micro tears in the muscle fibers. That tearing, that effort that feels slightly painful, that's the friction. And the repair process afterwards, that's the growth. That leads to stronger muscles. But if you only ever rest the muscle, it doesn't just stay the same. It actually weakens. It atrophies. And the same logic applies directly to our minds, especially with things like learning a language or developing a professional skill. If you want fluency, you have to be willing to walk through the discomfort, the mispronunciations, the awkward pauses, forgetting words mid-sentence.
Yeah, if you want real deep confidence, you have to face the possibility of rejection, or sounding foolish sometimes.
Well,
You want wisdom, you have to push through confusion, that frustration of not getting it immediately. The source material is, well, pretty blunt about this. There's no meaningful victory waiting for you in just repeating what you already know or what feels easy.
And this internal conflict, this choice, it's happening inside all of us every single day. Right at that moment, we choose between the familiar thing and the challenging thing.
The way the sources contrast the language really highlights this struggle perfectly. It's like two voices. Comfort says, stay safe. Don't risk feeling awkward or looking silly. Growth whispers, step forward. Just see what you can handle.
Comfort says, oh, you can definitely do it tomorrow. You need to be 100% ready first.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need to internalize this. Tomorrow is almost always just comfort wearing a polite smile. It's a socially acceptable delay tactic approved by your own nervous system.
Comfort says, look, it's fine. At least you're not failing spectacularly. But growth demands. Okay, but are you winning? Are you expanding the map of your own life? That old cliche, no pain, no gain. It might sound crude, but there's a reason it persists. Because every meaningful step forward demands some small, necessary measure of struggle.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly from the broad theory and look at a specific, maybe universal case study. Something that really illustrates the long-term damage of this comfort trap. The case of the comfortable employee.
Right. Imagine someone, a professional, maybe 5 years into the same job at the same company. They're good at it, reliable, respected. But critically, they don't love the job, but they don't hate it either. That's fine. The challenges are manageable, the task is familiar, the routine is predictable. They are, in a word, comfortable.
They know everyone. They know the workload. They know exactly when that decent, dependable paycheck hits their account. And that provides this deep feeling of safety, stability. It feels secure in its predictability.
But underneath all that stability, there's often this persistent small voice. Maybe it's ambition, maybe just dissatisfaction, and it's whispering, you could do more. You're capable of something bigger. It's
Yeah.
calling for a change. And this is exactly where the comfort trap springs shut. That inner voice gets ignored. Why? Because more means uncertainty. Changing jobs. That means facing interviews, learning new things, meeting new people, maybe failing or feeling awkward initially. It means high effort and significant discomfort. So the person clings to what they know, the comfortable present, and they rationalize staying put.
And the sources make it clear this avoidance isn't usually malicious self-sabotage. It's more like a self-defense mechanism. It's the brain prioritizing preventing anxiety right now over achieving ambition sometime in the future. It's a slow, quiet trade-off of potential.
And then years pass, maybe 10, maybe 15 years down the line. And the realization hits, often with a kind of crushing weight.
Hmm.
They weren't actually stuck in the job. They could have left any time. They were stuck, paralyzed inside themselves, trapped by their own constant pursuit of ease. That routine, that predictability, it killed their ambition, slowly, quietly, politely,
Hmm.
without ever really causing a major crisis, just a slow burn of potential going unrealized.
Wow. That phenomenon, preferring the known thing, even if it's limiting or kind of miserable, that's perfectly captured in that common English expression, isn't it? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Oh, absolutely. That phrase says so much about our psychology. It perfectly encapsulates powerful cognitive biases. Things like status quo bias. We prefer things to stay the same. And loss aversion, we feel the pain of a potential loss, like leaving the known job, much more strongly than the potential pleasure of a gain, like finding a better job. So people genuinely prefer familiar misery, the struggle they know, the comfortable stagnation over an unfamiliar possibility. Simply because the unknown, the uncertainty of change, it triggers these primal fear responses deep in our nervous system.
And that's the terrible irony we really have to face in this deep dive, isn't it? Pretty much every big goal, every dream you've ever seriously considered lives specifically on the other side of that uncertainty. By choosing the devil you know, the comfortable devil, you're basically building a wall between yourself and your own potential.
And this isn't just about us avoiding things. It's also about life constantly sort of inviting us to expand. Let's look at the origin of the word challenge for a second. It gives us the perfect counterpoint to comfort and ease. Challenge comes from the Latin verb calere, which means to call out.
So a challenge is literally life calling you out of your current state, your current comfort zone. It's an invitation to grow, a necessary friction.
Exactly. And every time you ignore that call, every time you retreat back into the comfortable silence or the familiar routine of your potential, that inner voice urging you to grow, it just gets quieter and quieter. The cost of comfort isn't just that you don't grow, it's that the very part of you that wants to grow starts to atrophy.
Okay, so we've analyzed the cage, we've looked at the psychological locks and the linguistic bars. Now we need the key. And this is where the source material shifts, offering a path forward. And it doesn't seem to require some massive, heroic overhaul of your life overnight. Instead, the strategy is about cultivating what the sources call deliberate doses of discomfort. You don't try to smash your comfort zone all at once, that often leads to burnout and makes you retreat even harder next time. You just stretch it, gently but persistently, one conscious act at a time.
And these actions, they need to be small enough that you can actually do them, but big enough to actually break the pattern of avoidance. They need to inject a little bit of that productive friction back into your day. Let's get really practical. What are some actionable steps that specifically target that fear of discomfort? First, communicative discomfort. If you're learning English or any skill, use it. Speak, even if your accent feels terrible or you know your vocabulary is lacking. That small act of choosing intentional verbal imperfection, choosing friction over silence, that's a dose of social discomfort. It starts to recalibrate your tolerance for judgment.
Okay, second, physical discomfort. Maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier than you want to. Use that time for focused work or exercise. Defy that urge for just 5 more minutes of ease. That's a dose of low-level physical discomfort that trains your discipline muscle. Third, maybe informational deprivation discomfort. Go for a walk or sit down to work without your phone right next to you. The point isn't just the walk itself. It's about managing that little spike of anxiety, that urge to reach for a distraction. You're training yourself to handle the discomfort of just being present, maybe even slightly bored.
And finally, relational discomfort. Saying no firmly when you really mean no, even if it's easier to say yes. Or conversely, saying a scary yes to an opportunity that pushes you professionally or socially. These acts are like micro-victories against that ease-seeking part of your brain. They force you to confront potential awkwardness or temporary conflict and survive it.
And these deliberate choices, they start to break that psychological contract you have with comfort. Plus, scientifically, there's a huge tangible benefit happening, especially when it comes to mental expansion, like language learning. Every new word you actually learn and use, every complex grammar structure you manage to deploy in a sentence, every single practice session where you force yourself to think in English instead of just translating, that literally changes the physical structure of your brain.
Yes, this is the amazing biology of neuroplasticity. The brain's incredible ability to adapt, reorganize, and rewire itself based on sustained effort and new experiences. This is why discomfort isn't just a mental thing, it changes you biologically. When you struggle with a new idea, your neurons are literally reaching out, trying to form new connections. That feeling of effort, the cognitive friction, that is the physical work of construction happening in your brain. And as you repeat that difficult action, the brain strengthens those specific pathways. It's called synaptic strengthening. And it's often helped by the production of myelin sheath. It's like insulation around the neural wires.
Myelin, that's the insulation, right? Makes the signal go faster.
Exactly. The more myelin you build around a pathway through practice and effort, the faster and more efficient that connection becomes.
Yeah.
So what felt incredibly hard and slow yesterday, me forming a complex English sentence, becomes noticeably easier and faster today. The discomfort you push through literally built the biological foundation for your future ease and competence.
So the big takeaway here has to be clear. Don't aim for perfection. Perfection is often just paralysis wearing a fancy mask. Aim instead for progress that feels uncomfortable. That feeling, it isn't the enemy. It's not a sign you're failing. It's your teacher. It's the biological proof that your brain is stretching, adapting, and getting stronger.
And I really want you to internalize this powerful truth that comes through. Discomfort is the birthplace of confidence. It really is one of the most foundational principles of meaningful self-development.
Think about that classic example, public speaking. Or maybe just speaking English in a meeting or a crowded room. The very first time you try, your voice probably shakes. Your mind might go blank. Your hands might tremble. That is pure, raw discomfort.
But the sources consistently show that real confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the demonstrated ability to act despite the fear. So the second time you try speaking up, maybe you tremble a little less. Maybe you forget fewer words. By the 10th time, your voice sounds stronger, more resonant, and eventually, you might even forget you were ever scared of it.
That transformation, it isn't magic. It's not like you suddenly got talented. It's pure repetition, fueled by courage, sustained by facing that friction, not by staying comfortable. Comfort gives you this short-term lie that you're secure. But true, lasting confidence, that's only built on the evidence, the proof, that you can handle and overcome these small, self-imposed challenges.
Now, we also have to tackle those subtle, pervasive lies that comfort whispers to keep us in place. The rationalizations. We hear these phrases in our own heads, right? Oh, you're fine just the way you are, or you've done enough for today. Or the most powerful one, emotionally, you deserve a break.
And look, rest is absolutely crucial, foundationally necessary for recovery. But we have to learn to spot the difference, behaviorally, between genuine healthy rest and psychological resistance dressed up as rest.
Rest refuels you. It's active recovery, prepares your body and mind for the next round of effort. It lets those muscle fibers repair and get stronger. Comfort, though, when it's used as an avoidance strategy, as resistance, it numbs you. It dulls your ambition, suppresses the tension needed for growth, and just maintains the status quo. It doesn't provide genuine recovery. It's more like a tranquilizer than a tonic.
Okay, so this gives us the key question. The self-diagnostic tool we need to use every time we feel that powerful pull towards ease, towards putting something off. When you hesitate, when you start rationalizing delay, ask yourself clearly, and without judging yourself, just ask, am I resting right now, or am I resisting?
And if the honest answer is resistance, if you know you're avoiding the thing because it feels hard or awkward or tiring, then the only truly effective advice is simple, almost brutally simple. You have to engage, even slightly, with the very thing you're avoiding. The goal isn't perfection in that moment, it's just to interrupt the resistance loop.
Because we have to realize comfort zones aren't static. They don't just sit there patiently waiting for us to decide to leave. The psychological reality is they shrink. The longer you hide inside them, the smaller your world actually becomes. And the bigger and scarier the world outside seems.
Maybe your comfort zone is staying quiet in meetings because you're worried about your English. Maybe it's staying in a relationship that no longer challenges you. Or just a daily routine that demands nothing new. Whatever it is, the sources advise against trying to fight this inertia with guilt. Guilt just paralyzes you further. It's another way to feel bad without actually doing anything.
Right. Instead, you fight inertia with movement, with momentum. The only way to counter psychological resistance seems to be physical, mental, or verbal momentum. One small, specific action each day that scares you just a tiny bit, that's the necessary friction.
Speak one sentence in English that feels grammatically risky. Read one paragraph of something dense without translating every word. Ask one question in that meeting, even if your voice shakes. Every single micro-action is like casting a vote for growth, not for comfort.
And always remember that cost-benefit analysis in the back of your mind. Discomfort, it's temporary, it peaks, it sucks for a bit, and then it recedes. And it's often replaced by competence, or at least resilience. Regret, though, regret from staying still, from letting potential just wither on the vine, that's not temporary. That's a slow, chronic poison. That's the real long-term cost of choosing comfort over growth.
Let's just pull back for a final thought. Think about the people you admire. Maybe successful speakers, fluent language users, confident creators you follow. The sources remind us of this profound universal truth. Every single one of them, at some point, was terrified. Terrified of being seen, judged, failing publicly. They navigated the exact same emotional landscape you might be facing right now.
But they learn something absolutely fundamental about how transformation works. It's not comfort that shapes you, it's friction. You don't become fluent during moments of peace and quiet ease. You become fluent under pressure when you have to find the right word right now.
You don't become confident by staying ready, by preparing endlessly until you think you're perfect. That day never comes. You become confident by doing it scared, by accumulating the evidence, experience by experience, that you can survive those moments of discomfort.
This is why comfort feels so good initially, because it's essentially lying to you in the short term. It promises that avoiding discomfort keeps you safe emotionally and psychologically, but all it really does is keep you exactly the same, stagnating, while the world and your own potential moves on without you.
So the next time you hear that voice in your head saying, I'm just not ready yet, or need one more week or one more course, remember this crucial insight. No one ever feels truly 100% absolutely ready for the big leaps, or even the small, scary steps.
They just start. They make a decision that the cost of staying comfortable has finally become higher than the perceived risk of moving forward, even awkwardly.
And just by starting, they begin to build momentum. And momentum is the one force that comfort absolutely cannot survive. Every mistake you make and learn from, every sentence you practice, every difficult conversation you navigate, it's like a small crack in the walls of that comfort zone. Keep making those cracks. Let the light in. Let the potential out.
Because one day you'll look back at where you started and those walls, they'll just be gone. And you won't even feel like you escaped your comfort zone. You'll realize you simply definitively outgrew it.
So remember this perspective. Your comfort zone isn't your home. It's just your starting point. A temporary place to refuel, maybe? Step out, stumble, speak, even if imperfectly. And let your discomfort become the undeniable living proof that you are alive, you are expanding, you are growing. That is the necessary, beautiful friction of genuine growth.